Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Lawyer. I'm continuing my analysis to dig deeper and deeper into the sense of MEYIWA trial. This afternoon, I want to just pose one simple question for you as my viewers. When did the court realize that the testimony of Absalom Zungu is hearsay evidence? When did the court wake up to that? Because you see, now you see the position of the prosecution and Judge Ratha and Baloyi himself, being that, all this is hearsay. From Begizeni Zungu to Absalom Zungu to Constable Zungu, Absalom Zungu's son, to Gininda, and to the court. That is the chain. This is what I call a chain of fraud. So for days and days and weeks, Gininda was before the Pretoria High Court, telling a tale that will forever haunt the Pretoria High Court. This story came from Gininda and his junior partner in the whole setup, Constable Zungu, who at the expense of being a Judas Iscariot was prepared to do anything to sell his soul to Gininda and to betray his father in a plot that he knew to be false and fraudulent, only because he was looking forward to a promotion as promised by Gininda. What a son, or what a thing for a son to do to his father. So Gininda came with this evidence. This evidence came from the prosecution, remember, because the prosecution put Gininda before the Pretoria High Court. And Gininda was just allowed to go on and on to testify about this hearsay. Remember how Gininda, when he's asked a question, Gininda will give you the history. If you ask him where Johannesburg, Pretoria, or Durban are, Gininda will start off by giving you the history of South Africa. So Gininda came before that court, pretended to be an expert of sorts, and gave those long-winded answers. But the bottom line was that the court was prepared to hear him, not for 1 hour, not for 1 day, but for weeks, as he testified and rendered that false evidence that Muzi Sibiya and Bongani Ntanzi had been somehow complicit in the killing of Senzo MEYIWA, according to his own fraudulent scheme. You see, because this affidavit now is Gininda's affidavit. It is a thumbs-up affidavit that Gininda just manufactured to get to arrest accused 1 and 2. So the court has been listening to this hearsay evidence without not raising an eyebrow. Judge Ratha and Baloyi Judge Ratha, I'm now going Judge Ratha and Baloyi. You see, they are so close to each other. Judge Ratha never raised an eyebrow about the fact that the prosecution at that stage was leading hearsay evidence, and that such evidence would not advance the case of the prosecution or was a waste. At worst, it was a waste of the court's time. Like, he seems to be so inclined at this stage. Because every time now he comes across this evidence, he just wants to dismiss it as hearsay evidence. But he listened to the same hearsay evidence for days and days and weeks and never raised his little finger against that sort of evidence. There is a reason behind that. There's a reason behind that. There was a hope at that stage, a false hope, that perhaps at some stage, Absalom Zungu would be persuaded to come before the Pretoria High Court and vouch for that fraud. In other words, there was always this hope by Gininda and Baloyi that in spite of the fact that this was hearsay evidence, the maker of this affidavit, the person who deposed this affidavit, would come before court at a later stage and vouch for it, and it would cease to be hearsay. That was the premise from which they were operating. As things turned out, they were up against Absalom Zungu. Absalom Zungu, like I've already indicated on a number of occasions, had nothing to do with that. So it was at that stage that they realized that, no, since Absalom Zungu is not coming forward now, we must abandon this fraudulent scheme. We must abandon our own exhibit U in brackets 1 and run away from it. This exhibit has become dangerous now because, we have manufactured, we have come up with this explosive thing that is now threatening to derail our entire case because of the integrity that Absalom Zungu displayed. He would not be promised anything. Somebody was promised to be taken into exile to neighboring countries, all sorts of things. And the man was just determined not to play ball because Absalom Zungu has told the Pretoria High Court at some stage when he was angry, he told the judge to his face that this court is corrupt. He told Judge Baloyi, Judge Ratha and Baloyi that. So angered by all what is happening, that he just found himself using those words. Oh, well, he had to apologize, but the damage was done. He had had enough of this court. So all of a sudden, the prosecution abandons its own affidavit, its own exhibit, and it is now left to the defense to pick up that affidavit and do something out of it. Just when the defense puts it before the court, all of a sudden now it becomes hearsay evidence. Baloyi goes out of his way now to condemn and spit on his own affidavit to say, no, this is hearsay evidence. Because Absalom Zungu is here now rubbishing this and exposing this fraud. How smart they think they can be. There's a saying that says, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. You cannot fool, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool people like Absalom Zungu. He's not part of that, crowd that easily gets fooled. So now this is a catch-22 situation, because now that affidavit is going to be the subject of a criminal investigation, the prosecution is now washing off his hands and saying, we are not even going to use this evidence. We are not even going to call Absalom Zungu. Zungu is too hot to hold. This man will land us in jail. That he has come before the court and told the whole of South Africa. And I'm glad that this trial is being televised live for all of South Africa to see some of these things. So that when some of us bring them up, people don't just simply think that we are making them up. So these are the shenanigans of the Senzo MEYIWA trial at this stage. Prosecution comes up with hearsay evidence. The court hears it for weeks and weeks. Nobody even raises an eyebrow. Nobody bats an eyelid at that kind of hearsay evidence. But when the same hearsay evidence, which happens to be a fraud, not only is it hearsay evidence, but it's a fraud, is in the hands of the prosecution, the defense rather, because the prosecution has just simply run away from it. But with his tail between his legs, he just ran away from it. This is a hot potato and have nothing more to do with it. And you could see him as he was, cross-examining Absalom Zungu, that you could see that sense of desperation. You could see that sense of desperation in his face, that the sooner he's done with it, the better. So nobody's going to get fooled here. That fraud case that is unfolded before the Pretoria High Court has already been opened in the Newcastle police station against Gininda. And one will follow with a sense of interest how that fraud case opened by Absalom Zungu in Newcastle unfold. Because as far as the Pretoria High Court is concerned, Absalom Zungu is done. And we thank him for exposing this fraud. So this is how the case, how the goalposts shift. Hearsay evidence in the hands of the prosecution is not hearsay evidence. Once they abandon that and see that Absalom Zungu is not playing ball, and the defense picks up that same hearsay evidence brought by them before the court, that exhibit label was given to the court at the behest of Baloyi. All of a sudden, nobody wants to hear about this hearsay evidence. I can appreciate their desperation. Because this is not only hearsay evidence, but it is fraudulent hearsay evidence, and somebody must go to jail for this. If we live in a country that respects justice. Having said that, let me thank you for watching this video. Let me thank you for all the subscriptions, views, and likes that I'm seeing. Please continue to support the Daily Fix. And the Daily Fix will be loyal to you and bring you news and news analysis on a daily basis, once or twice a day, that you'll never get any other news source in South Africa. And that I can guarantee. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon and evening.